Olas Media. Olas Media presents Cannabis Enlightened. Now here's your host, Dr. Leroy Brady.
Hello, everybody, and welcome again to another episode of Cannabis Enlightened. I am your host, Dr. Leroy, and today we have an amazing guest with us to share his cannabis experience. Now, I want all of you to listen very carefully because this kind of interview only comes once in a long time. My guest today is Dennis Hunter, and he is an individual that has been in the cannabis space. I mean, ground level. And when I say ground level, I mean growing cannabis for a long time. I'm told over 30 years. Is that correct, Dennis?
Yeah, that's correct.
So, all right. So this is going to be a unique and amazing interview in a lot of different ways. And I want to let the audience know that as I'm interviewing Dennis, and he's going to tell some pretty astounding stories about himself in the cannabis space. And I want you to know right off the bat that he is not African-American. He is white. And some of you, I have to say that because some of you may think that, well, gee, Dr. Leroy is interviewing another African-American. No. In the trials and tribulations and experiences and adventures that Dennis has gone on, he has done them being white. So without any further ado, I'm going to ask Dennis to come on and introduce himself and tell us a little bit about who he is and what he does. Dennis, welcome.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to being on with you, and it's quite an honor. My name is Dennis Hunter. Like Dr. Leroy just said, been in the industry in cultivation of cannabis pretty much since I was in high school. And so in the late 80s, early 90s, going to high school and basically also growing. So I came from an area in the Emerald Triangle in Mendocino County. It's kind of a culture in that town and that area that just there was so many either loggers or growers, and I kind of like hanging out with the growers more than loggers at the time. So I just kind of took to cannabis and loved the plant, and then pretty much the rest of my life was pretty much revolved around cannabis in some way or another.
So Dennis, when you say loggers, you're talking about cutting down trees and the old axe or the saw.
Yeah. So up in that area, you have a lot of forests and trees, your fir trees and redwood trees, and so in those areas, you have a lot of logging companies, and especially in like the 80s and 90s, they did a lot of logging in those areas, and so you kind of had this weird cultural mix between these sort of hippie growers and these redneck loggers, and it made for a pretty fun childhood growing up. Growing weed and with a 4-wheel drive truck, So
give me a context, Dennis, with respect to the year. What year are we talking? Years are we talking?
Yeah, so this is I graduated in 1990 from high school. I was growing while I was in high school, so kind of one way to get lunch money, So.
I guess so. Yeah. So now when you were growing, it's another thing I'm going to point out to our audience. If I can take that 1990, you graduated, you were growing. When you were growing, it was not legal.
No, it wasn't legal. In that town, in that community, you had a culture of a lot of people that were growing. So it wasn't really looked at like negatively from most of the people in that area. And there were so many people kind of doing it in that area that it wasn't that big of a deal. It was just kind of one of the things you did in that kind of community.
Sure. So is there a special type of cannabis that you were growing, or how did you know that what you were growing was going to be good?
It's kind of just similar to what it is now. You have breeders that bred, or somebody that got seeds from Amsterdam, or had this strain or that strain, and And so you would get seeds from different people and grow it from there. Year after year, you would just learn more about the different strains that you liked and how they did in that climate and things like that. When I was growing, it wasn't like I was growing on my own property. My parents weren't cool with cannabis. So what I would do is I'd go out and hike through the woods and find like a spring that was coming out of the side of the hill. And then I'd build a spring box to collect water and tie a line into it. And I used chicken wire and wrapped it in between some trees and lined it with plastic and filled it up with water and hooked on a little timer, and it would water the garden. I'd go around to the south side of the hill with black poly pipe and put drippers in to where I put all the plants, and I kind of thinned out a little bit of areas in the bushes and planted and pushed all the things out to the side to keep the deer and animals from kind of destroying the plants. So it was totally like renegade, go out into the woods and create a little area from a spring to grow. So it was, it was a lot of fun because you're like out there, you're sneaking out, trying to walk out without leaving a trail where your kind of, we call them patches back then, where your patch was, because if some stranger found it, they might take it. So you're trying to hide it. You're trying to hide it from, people that are walking around or hunters or hide it from the helicopters. Once back then you had CAMP, which is Campaign Against Marijuana Planting. It was kind of the federal government giving grants to have these teams go in to look for cannabis with helicopters. And so you always had to gamble, like, how far out did you put the plants outside of the trees where they could be seen from the helicopters? Or if you put them too far under the trees, they didn't get enough sun. So you're always gambling with how much risk you were willing to do by putting the plants out and get more sun.
Now, what's amazing me is that you were doing this at a young age. It sounded like 17, 18 or younger than that.
Yeah, even 16, probably.
16, 17, 18. So how did you know that that the cannabis was going to be good? I mean, is it trial and error, or did you just have a knack for it?
No, it is trial and error. I learned how to do it from some older guys that were doing it. They took me and showed me their gardens that they had set up. And so I was like, oh, wow, this is really cool. As I got a little tour through, somebody's older brother's garden. And I'm just like, and I was one of those like kind of jack of all trades. My dad always taught me how to do everything: building, plumbing, sheetrock, doesn't matter. And so I had all these skill sets. And so, growing was, there's some plumbing of running this pipe around the hill and just, being able to put things together. And so I kind of had a knack to just get it done. And so once I seen somebody else do it, I just kind of, copied what they did and then learned from there. Okay.
Well, take us through your first grow. Or your first successful grow, because I'm assuming that maybe the first time you grew some cannabis, maybe it didn't turn out right, and then finally you got a pretty good crop.
Yeah.
What did you do?
Well, the first one was in my friend's backyard. His parents were cool and with cannabis, so we grew some big plants in his backyard, and his dad kind of showed us what to do, and we grew, I don't know, 5 or 10 pounds of cannabis. Back then it was, it definitely wasn't the best, but it was okay. And we sold it, but we went out one night and I grabbed my dad's like service truck, ones with toolboxes on it. Mm-hmm. I kind of snuck out, took it out, kind of joyriding with some friends, and he got his mom's LTD, big old boat car. And we were out by the railroad tracks trying to kind of jump them over this little hump and kind of just getting rowdy as, 16-year-old kids. And, and I ran my dad's service truck into his mom's LTD, and it just smashed up the trunk and everything. So that first harvest, went to buy his mom a new car and fix my dad's service truck. So,
but that's hilarious. That's hilarious. Okay, with the second crop, how did you? Okay, second crop you have is successful, and you pick the flower.
Yeah. It was again out in the second one was out in the hills where it was just total clandestine little grow out in the hills where I had to I had to walk in nutrients and
Wow.
all the stuff for it, and was able to harvest it. I dried it out in the woods too, under trees, and then my friends and I just paid them to come up with me on the trees and trim it. So we'd go out with lanterns and hang out all night and, drink beer and trim the flower out, because we couldn't bring it home because my mom would be pissed. Right. So I couldn't bring it anywhere. So we literally did the whole process out in the woods, and then got, a handful of pounds out of it and sold it, and, had money as a young kid.
Wow.
And from there on, I was kind of addicted, and just, it was kind of my whole life revolved around it.
So I can just imagine, let's go work for Dennis Hunter. He pays us money and he gives us beer. Wow. You probably never had a problem with finding people to help you.
No. I don't, there was no problem with that.
Okay.
We always had a good time when we were doing it. So it was kind of great. It was more of a lifestyle almost. Like I was saying, it's so much fun. You can just imagine, it's a lot of work, but you're like hiking out to go check on it. It was always exciting because sometimes I wouldn't see it for 2 or 3 days. And so you're going through, you're trying not to leave a trail going through the woods. And then you get to the patch and you kind of walk around that corner to see the plants. And they're like another foot taller than they were last time you seen them. And it was exciting. And even the part of, trimming and selling it and just kind of everything around it, it just was the culture and just, we had a blast, and you did it. Other friends were doing it, and it just really kind of turned into a lifestyle.
So I was going to say, it's a lifestyle, it's a culture, it's nothing unusual. You did your second crop. How much did you make?
I'd make 20,000, 30,000, somewhere in, something like that.
Wait a minute, $20,000?
Yeah.
So you're a young kid, and you're not 20 yet. And you're growing something out of the earth, and you're cultivating it, and you're manicuring it, you're cutting it, and you found a way to make $20,000?
Yeah, probably more.
More?
Yeah.
How often?
Back then it was mostly once a year. So because you weren't doing light dep, it wasn't indoor. So you had kind of one crop in, October, November. You would take it down and you kind of got what you got. Sometimes a ripoff would find it and you wouldn't even get the crop off. So you spend all year growing it and then lose it. And so, there's all those ups and downs and some of you like, oh, you made that much money. Well, maybe you lost it all too. So it's not all, that it's the trials and tribulations that come along with it as well. And, it's at times you got your flush with money because you just harvested, and it's funny because some people go broke all year long and then they get their money right at harvest and they spend it all in 3 or 4 months and they're broke for the rest of the year until they harvest again.
Wow. Okay, what are we buying now? So you're not 20 years old yet, or maybe around 20.
Yeah, I'm probably at 17. I got enough that I put a down payment and I bought a house.
You bought a house at 17
and fixed it up and rented it out. I have renters that were like twice my age.
Oh my God. Wait a minute. You're telling me that at a young age, you were an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Growing and trimming and preparing cannabis. And you were, in that regard, you were an entrepreneur. And then you were another entrepreneur because you were a landlord. Yeah. You bought houses, fixed them up, and you rented them to people that were twice your age.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's amazing. Okay. So let's fast forward a little bit. You had been doing this for several years, and I'm thinking that you were getting pretty good at it.
Yeah. I tell you, one of those things, like, I've been growing for 30 something years.
Sure.
But it's with cultivation and growing cannabis. I think maybe it's why we get so addicted to growing and loving this plant is it's always hard to understand. And I feel like even I'm still learning, like every year teaches you another thing or something else goes wrong that you have to figure out how to fix. And so it's one of those, it's a lifelong lesson that's being taught to you, and so, yeah, you get better, but never do you get it figured out all the way.
Dennis, I'm glad you said that, because many people that I come in contact with, a lot of students I used to teach when I I was teaching the business of cannabis, and still, now I talk to people, they find out what I do, and they say, "Oh, I want to be a cultivator. I want to grow and I want to get rich." And you're letting me know on this podcast, on episode, that it's not a piece of cake. It takes time to develop the techniques to be a good grower.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's things outside of your control that happen sometimes too. And so a lot of times you're limiting how many things outside your control that can happen. And so, and then some people first crop, they just knock it out of the park. And I'm like, oh man, you're ruined for the rest of your life. You're going to have all disappointments from here on out.
Oh, wow. Okay. So now at that time, you weren't so much concerned with CBD or THC. I'm thinking that the THC was the thing.
Yeah, no one even knew what CBD was back then. It was several years after that the other cannabinoids started, to be, more. People had more knowledge about them and things like that. So we didn't really even think about that. There were just different strains and stuff that we'd grow. Find, sativa and indica was that. There's another ruderalis was a kind of that weird stepchild one of that would grow. And
tell us about that.
Maybe a lot of the autoflowers and things come from it. It was one that would just start flowering right off the bat. It would only get a few feet tall. And so I went to Amsterdam at one point and got some seeds and so I came back and I had a couple of ruderalis seeds and it was like, oh my gosh, these things started flowering pretty much right after I planted them. And so it was just a kind of weird plant at the time. We didn't really understand a lot about it. So you kind of had the indica, sativa. That's kind of how you judge things. And, a lot of times it seemed like the indicas could finish a little bit early. The sativas went long and got tall and kind of more skinny, long leaves and stuff like that.
So was your education mostly the experience, or were you reading books or articles or talking to other growers?
Yeah. So I definitely tried to learn as much as I could and took advice from people. And a lot of times I seemed like I hung out with a lot of older people than myself. And so I got really great experiences from going up to places and seeing huge grows and just gave me more ideas to expand and go larger. And it was, kind of cowboying it out there for many years.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So now it sounds like you were doing really well in the cannabis space, growing. And it sounds like you also started cultivating. And in a way, started the processing, I guess, maybe? No,
that didn't. Extraction, even back then, people didn't do a lot of extraction. It really wasn't around. People were smoking flower and stuff like that. I think it was probably in the mid 90s, late 90s that I really seen some first cannabis oil, and people were kind of, hot knifing, heating up knives and kind of hot knifing, oil that they had gotten and stuff like that. So it was very kind of rudimentary, ways of smoking cannabis oil.
Okay. Now, in your heyday, at the apex where you were really doing well, how much cannabis were you growing, and what was that producing in terms of dollars and cents?
Yeah, so I kept going and growing a little bit larger. It was like kind of always a challenge, and there would be a lot of money that would come, and it seems like it would always kind of flow through your hands a lot. I don't know, like you used it to go bigger and buy property or do something to keep expanding. It didn't seem like it ever like just stuck with you like you would think. But I'd seen, I had some grows where they were pretty large, and it could be hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars that we were growing that year, and even larger at times. And back probably when I was 22, I bought this property. And so I'm kind of going to go from, growing that guerrilla style growing out just in national forest or state forest or wherever, and actually buy property where I'm growing. And, and then I was literally getting ready to do it, and we had planted all these plants and one rainy day, had the sheriffs come in and raid the property, and I took off running, and kind of ran up through the woods and had to turn myself in later, and then I ended up getting sentenced to 7.5 months in the county jail in Mendocino County at 22 years old, but I was in there, I was serving the time, and I was literally planning my next grow. I spent had a piece of paper. I was drawing out all the different things I was going to do.
So jail didn't deter you?
No. It was just a place to meet other growers and so I basically got out and I moved to Humboldt County, and I had this whole plan. I'm like, man, I'm not going to get caught again. So I decided to build an underground indoor grow.
Oh my gosh.
And I literally rented a backhoe and dug a hole, and had a contractor guy help me and poured a slab and built cinder block walls and put a barn on top of it. I even put little horse stalls out around it so it looked good, and had a generator that was running to power it. And so I did this big indoor grow, and then bought another property and put in, more grows on that, outdoor grows. I started buying property all over this whole area up in Humboldt. Mm-hmm. And I had outdoor grows just everywhere. And then I built another huge indoor grow that had, several hundred lights. And at that time that was huge. Right now, in the regulated cannabis, that's like a mediocre little grow. But back in, the mid 90s, 300 lights was unheard of, and powering it all with a diesel generator and out in the middle of nowhere. And so I did that for several years. And like I said, the money comes in. Well, I bought properties, right? So I kept buying all these properties with money I was making. And then, one terrible day, I met these strangers walking down the road, and I didn't meet them. I had to go find them because one of the guys that was working with me seen them. And so we went and kind of looked and found them hiding in the woods, and I walked them off the property, and they told me they were cutting firewood out there. And pretty soon I asked them for ID, and I was getting upset because they wouldn't give me their ID. And I was like, you're trespassing. And I told them I was going to put them under citizen's arrest, and they kind of chuckled a little bit. And one of them pulled out a gun and pulled out a necklace badge, and he was DEA. And so just like I always do, I ran. I took off running, went across the road, running through the woods, and I had my wife and a newborn baby back at this house that I just built. So I ran there and I got him in the car, and I told him to go out the back road. And then I went down to the big indoor that I built. Right. And I had all these trimmers there, like 12 people trimming there. And I'm like, got them out and told them to walk out down through the woods and get out of there. And then pretty soon all the sheriffs and DEA, all of them came in, and I took off and went and got an attorney, and my attorney's looking at it. There were so many plants there at the time. There was 12,000 plants.
Oh my!
It was huge. It was the biggest indoor bust in Humboldt history at the time. And there was news camera crews that came and filmed it all. I had people on the East Coast seeing the news media talking about it, because I built it like a facade, so it made it look like there was playgrounds and all this stuff around this big building. And so they walk through with the news crew, like, oh, you're here up in the middle of nowhere in Humboldt, and do this whole news story. And I'm just like, oh man, I am in so much trouble. Like, wow. What am I going to do? And I went and talked to attorney. And he's seen the indictment, and he's like, man, this is going to be, you're in trouble. If I were you, I'd just take your wife and your kid and go to Canada, and you should get out of here. These feds don't play. Wow. And so I went on the run and became a fugitive.
Oh my.
And so I changed my name. I got passports for me, my wife, and young daughter. Mm-hmm. And they're all different, people that I knew from, away from me a little bit. I gave them money to let me use their ID and their identity, and went and got real driver's license and real passports. And, so I became Josh Abrams for 4.5 years.
Josh Abrams.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. For how long?
For 4.5 years.
Yeah.
And so I tried to go to Canada, but I got to the border and they tore apart this motorhome that I was trying to get in with. And the name that I had, Josh Abrams, and my wife and kid had different last names, all because of the passports, right? And so they're like, I guess there's a lot of times where a mother may take their kid up to Canada trying to get away from the husband or whatever. So they want to talk to the father of my daughter, which I am, but not really with this passport thing, right?
Sure.
And so they couldn't get a hold of them, and the stories didn't line up, and they rejected me. They literally had that, that little square box with the red rejected. They stamped my entry form and then turned me around and sent me back into the US. And then US Customs, like, why did they reject you? They tore apart the motorhome as well. I was sweating bullets for a couple of hours, and I was like, man, okay, I'm not going to Canada. So I shaved my head, grew a goatee, and came back down into Sonoma County. Started trying to figure out what to do. I need to make a living, and all I know how to do is grow. So I was just like setting up indoor grows for people and catching a little cut of it and stuff for years, and started a nutrient company called Cutting Edge Solutions, which now is kind of a large nutrient company for cannabis, and
it belongs to you.
It did at the time.
Okay.
I started,
but you sold it.
I had some partners, and they kept it running, and it's still going, and it's a great business. And so I just kind of did things around it, and kind of moved around. I opened a couple dispensaries as kind of the silent partner, and still very involved in cannabis, and then really tried to help. I was like, and the only way I can get out of trouble is if this thing's legal someday. And so I really started supporting that kind of legalization movement, and got behind and tried to support that. And then 4.5 years later.
But even before then, I think that you did more than you talked about doing so many months, but you did so you're greater time, didn't you?
Yeah. So that's why I say I was on the run for 4.5 years, because it all has to end one day, right?
Yeah.
So after 4.5 years, the DEA caught up with me and arrested me. And I got sentenced to 7.5 years or 6.5 years in federal prison. Which, I thought it felt like eternity. It's my life. Everything is falling apart. My wife left me. It was like, oh my God, the worst, feeling you could have. Just like, the world's over. And for a while, you don't even know what you're going to get sentenced to. So it was a horrible time. But I got so stressed and just depressed and stuff. I was like having my hair fall out. I'm sleeping, and it's like, wake up, there's like hair on my pillow, it just, stress was just eating me alive. And at one point I just like, I'm gonna like kill myself of just by just like stress and I just had to kind of pull myself out of it, and I got to a spot where it's just like, okay, I got to make the best of it, and kind of got my mindset, kind of let go of the outside world, and when people talk about doing hard time, with hard timing it, when you're in there, is the people that are stressing and everything is there. And then, over time you start to like let the world go outside, and then the time gets much easier. You try to keep yourself busy. You get routines that help you kind of get through the days. And then all of a sudden those days that would drag on, they feel like months. All of a sudden, now the months feel like days, because you're able to kind of let it all go and things like that. So I had to really, change my mindset and learn about myself and figure out, okay, I'm in a bad situation, but what am I going to do with it? It was.
So you did the 6 years.
Yeah.
The full 6 years. And then you were let go. And what year was that?
It was 2002 2002. I went in 2008. I got out.
You got out in 2008. When you got out, what did you start doing?
So I got out and, I'm on federal probation, right? So can't go grow weed anymore. So I told you I started that nutrient company back in the day. And so I'm like, what do I know a lot about? And I know a lot about cultivation. Mm-hmm. And so I started making cultivation products for cultivators and so gardening products, but more tailored towards growing cannabis.
Sure.
And so I started doing that, and I started making my own branded growing pots and my own branded turkey bags and my own branded like nutrients and stimulants for all the like amendments for growing cannabis that would bring out more terpenes mm-hmm. and things like that. And so I kind of got this cool experience of actually creating brands in the cultivation supply space.
Okay.
And pretty soon I started distributing those myself, and then I started distributing other people's products and created a distribution company for cannabis products. So you
bounced back.
Yeah.
Okay. It took a while. Okay. All right. So now 2008, you're out and you're starting to reinvent yourself. And I'm assuming that a few years went by. And you said that you started working to try to make cannabis legal, mm-hmm. okay, in California. And your actions worked out, okay? Because in, I believe, 2016 or before then?
Yeah. So yeah, 2000. Well, if we kind of keep on that run of, I was on federal probation for 5 years.
Okay.
And doing the cannabis supply, like cultivation supplies, and mm-hmm. That I was also watching it because I'm selling to growers. I'm selling into this industry, and I'm watching the industry sort of start to develop. We're still in the kind of Prop 215 days of medical marijuana, and they're letting people grow 96 plants or 30 plants, depending on what county you're in. Mm-hmm. And so I'm watching it, and I'm selling them. I'm selling, shovels to the miners, kind of thing. Right? I can't do it, but okay. I can sell them the shovels.
Right. Right.
And so I'm doing that, but I'm also, because I'm doing that, I'm very much paying attention to kind of how the industry is developing, and I'm starting to see different things. And you're starting to see vape pens, and you're starting to see these almost like branded products start to hit, mm-hmm. Some of these dispensary shelves. When the dispensaries first started in 96, so much of it was just flour, and jars of flour, and just, it was very crude and mm-hmm. kind of, but now at this time, you're really seeing like these people branding. They've got baked goods that are actually packaged and different things. So I'm watching it, but I'm supplying the farmers, and so 5 years later, I get off probation. Mm-hmm. And one of my biggest customers, I used to sell to all the hydroponic stores, but my biggest customer was this guy named Ned Fussell. And he's growing this plant. He's got gardens all over the county. He's doing just a little bit crazy all over the place. And he's buying more supplies from me as a distributor than my retail partners are as these hydroponic stores. And he's asking me stuff about, what I've done and advice, and he's buying all this product. And I'm like, man, I'm about to get off probation. And I'm like, have you seen those vape pens and some, like the branded products? I've just now created all these brands in the hydroponic supply chain for that. And I'm like, hey, what do you think about going? And we'll go in on an extractor with me, and we'll go extract some of this cannabis and make some of these products. I have a lot of experience in branding products and kind of, developing brands. You're obviously, out here growing and have a great team. So that was the beginning of Cannacraft. We literally met because I was selling him all of his growing supplies, and we bought our first extractor together. Extracted cannabis. I was sitting there in the warehouse trying to figure it out, and he was supplying all the flour and stuff that we were extracting, and we kind of stumbled through it till we figured it out. And and created a couple great brands with Absolute Extracts and Care by Design.
And Ned Fussell is your partner, is a co-founder of Cannacraft. And as you were talking about, the brands that you have created are, I understand, award-winning brands.
Yeah, we've definitely won many awards over the years, and this last year we got more than our share of awards. It was amazing at the Emerald Cup with several of our brands, Hi-Fi Hops, with the Lagunitas collaboration we do. We have Best Beverage with Care by Design, Best Tincture, and then Flower with Farmer and the Felon. We won, I think, 5 different awards for our outdoor flower.
That's an interesting name, Farmer and the Felon. I wonder where that came from.
Yeah, I wonder.
Fantastic. So it was like an experiment, just growing up, trying to, make some extra money. Then you got into it more. And then the more you got into it, it was illegal. You wound up doing some time. But then, it's kind of like a Cinderella story. It turned out that when cannabis became legal, you and Ned were in the business and doing well and have received a ton of awards. I mean,
yeah, and we have, and it's been an amazing ride, and it's never that easy, right? And some people ask me, like, why did you keep doing it? You went to prison, you went to jail for a while, and then you went to prison, and then you're back doing it again. And I think there's a piece of this that I kind of was like rebelled against it, because I also didn't feel that it should be illegal. And I felt when I was in jail, I was just like, it's such bullshit. Why is this, this plant illegal? I've seen it. I know that it's helped so many people, and, been involved in a lot of dispensaries in the early Prop 215 days where I've watched it change people's lives for the better. But then here it is, a Schedule I drug, and you're going to put people in jail and take them away from their kids because they're growing this natural plant that's amazing and has all these properties. And so, I think I had a chip on my shoulder, like you took a big chunk of my life away. And so I kind of came at it when I got out and I had these plans. I was laser focused that I was going to, this was going to be part of my life. And there was a little bit of sort of proving that point by getting into the industry and continuing to do it and not letting it knock me out because of their poor decision of making this wonderful plan illegal.
Wow, what a tremendous success story, and a story of tenacity, determination, that you weren't deterred because you really believed in, and you still believe in, cannabis as a product that should be legal and that is helpful. It's medicine. And I've always taught that cannabis is medicine. The fact that you get high from THC it's kind of like a byproduct of it, because as you alluded to earlier, so many other cannabinoids that are very helpful to people. And some of the products that you've developed are produced, designed, invented to help people, to help them get over pain. Your Design by Care is absolutely marvelous. I've used it myself, and I know many of the listeners have used it. So we have you to thank for that.
Yeah. No, and it's great to be able to create products that you see change people's lives. Like, when we look at on our website and we get responses from people that literally they tell you that, like, oh my God, I was wasting away, and this helped me so much, and change. It's just what a great blessing to be able to be involved in an industry where you can do something like that, and to be in an industry that's so young and immature right now, and there's so many challenges that challenge us, but there are also experiences that you can only get if you're kind of on this bleeding edge of this industry and stuff. So, and then there's also this piece when we were just talking about, the name Farmer and the Felon. This brand is really, we developed the brand. This was really to kind of talk about the story of our company and the fact that I'm a felon. and that I lost time in jail, and there's still so many people in jail right now, over 40,000 people in jail right now for nonviolent cannabis offenses. We have them postered up on up Cannacraft. You probably see on that wall.
Yes.
We kind of did some letter writing campaigns, because one thing, when you're in jail, it's a lonely place to be. And one thing that is what everybody looks forward to in jail is that mail call and getting those letters from the outside, knowing that people still remember you, care about you. And so it's just I just couldn't even imagine being in jail right now with a developed industry like this. Like, we got brands, there's billboards all over the place. And can you imagine being locked up for cannabis?
People win awards.
Now? An award
for growing something
I might even be able to have an advantage to get a license because I went to jail.
Exactly.
And it's like, wait, what are we forgetting? There's still 40,000 people sitting in prison right now for cannabis. And it's like, are we running with this whole thing over here? I mean, I think we just did a trade. The federal government just did a trade to get her out of Russia, which I'm glad they did. But when you think about it, I was just talking to somebody earlier today about it. I was like, what a weird thing, where federal government just got her out from having a vape pen and get her out from a crazy sentence in Russia. Yeah. But what is happening right here in the US, you've got people sitting in jail doing life or 40 years or 60 years for cannabis offenses that are happening right here. And it's just like we really, when we started the Farmer and the Felon brand, what we really wanted to do is create some messaging, using the brand to inform people that there's still people sitting in jail. It's not done. Just because we're seeing all this, it feels like it's legal. It's not. Federally, it's still a Schedule I drug, and people are still sitting in prison. And so as we keep going here, I think we have to shine the light on that and try to get these people out of jail.
Absolutely. I noticed that you are a member of the advisory board for the Last Prisoner Project. And not only have you donated your presence, but also I noticed that the Farmer and the Felon brand is a sponsor for that project, and I applaud you for that.
Yeah. And those guys are, and they're great. It's great being on that advisory board there, because I get to see some of the good work they're doing, and they are getting people out of jail, and they're creating policies that for whole states where they can hopefully get a big chunk of people out of jail, whether it's just one or whether it's a group in a whole state. They're doing some great policy work, and I would encourage everybody to help support them, because they're on the ground floor really trying to make the changes to get them out.
I noticed when I was in your facility, and you've got a large, beautiful, large, productive facility up in Santa Rosa. And in one of your buildings, an entire wall. And these are not small buildings. How many square feet do you have in that main building there?
Yeah, it's about 45,000 square feet.
45,000 in that one. And I know you have several other buildings in which you do distribution and you dry the flower and so forth. And how big are those?
It's probably altogether, all of it's probably around 75,000 square feet. 75,000
square feet. And one of those, the main building you were talking about, there is an entire wall. And I walked that wall and I tried to read there's a picture of the individual that's in prison and a write-up, a sincere write-up that if you stand there too long and read those, you start crying.
Yep. Absolutely.
I mean, you can't just read those captions and think, oh, well, that's just the way it goes. I mean, these are real people
with real families, you know, and, as hard as it is for that inmate, you can imagine being, that being your father that's in jail and have to grow up without a father or a mother and stuff. So.
Absolutely. Well, I think you're doing I know you're doing some amazing work in the cannabis space, and I applaud you for that. And I thank you for giving some of your time to talk with us about cannabis. And something new has happened with Cannacraft. Cannacraft has merged, I think, with March and Ash.
Yeah, we're really excited. We've merged with one of our best retail partners that we've been working with for several years, and just the culture fit between the founders of March and Ash and Cannacraft. When we got together, we really felt like, oh my gosh, we are so much alike, and it really is amazing having partners like these guys and the work that they've done down here in San Diego, with the communities. It's like when we first started too, it was like the stigma around cannabis. We had to battle that for many years. And so in doing that, we had to let people know who we are. And a lot of times what we did and what March and Ash does is get out in that community and get to know them and do community projects and really, show them. And pretty soon people would come. We do it with tours at Cannacraft. We tour through people that they might hate cannabis, but I give them a tour through Cannacraft and show them the products that we make. And they go, wow, this is not what I expected. This is like any product, like, this is what they had in their minds and what they had of the people being these evil people or something that and the media and the government have really done us a disservice of how they've painted this industry and stuff. And so the best way to change people's mind is to get out there and show them and have them meet you. You would see that you just change their minds, spending just a little bit of time with people. And then letting them see you out in the community, actually, that you care about the community and you're there to support it. And so it really changes things. And that's really what we've seen, that culture, bring the two companies together.
I can really say amen to that, because I have been a participant in a tour that you gave at Cannacraft and watched you give tours. And it appears as though every tour is fresh. I mean, it's not like, okay, here I go again. This is that. You're excited. And you must have done this tour, God, 1,000 times?
A lot of times. Well,
a lot of times.
A lot of times. But it is exciting because, we've worked so hard to build it. And there, like I said, it was never easy. There was turmoils. At one point we had cops come into Cannacraft and kick all the doors in and put me in jail on a $5 million bond. And it's like, talk about a bad day at Cannacraft, but what came out of it, we went and got the laws changed for manufacturing and sometimes bad things happen, but they happen because you need to react to it and change what's going on. And so with really bad days came good days after that, where you've seen change happen.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to refer to you now as a cannabis activist. Now, you're a real community cannabis activist, Dennis Hunter. Once again, I want to thank you for being so gracious with your time and giving us some stories and reactions, experiences that you had in cannabis. The listening audience, if they want to get in touch with you, how would they contact you?
Yeah, through our website. I think getting messaging through there. We also, we do tours up at Cannacraft. So if they ever find themselves in Santa Rosa and can contact us, it's one of the things we kind of have a sort of an open door policy and try to bring as many people through as possible. Okay.
Well, thank you very much, Dennis. Once again, I want to thank you. You've been listening to Dennis Hunter. He is co-founder of Cannacraft, now part of a large organization that includes March and Ash, spending some time with us, letting us know his travels through cannabis from high school to where he is now. A journey that had some ups and downs, but now I think he feels like he's helping people to better themselves through something natural, cannabis flower. Thank you very much, everybody.
If you'd like to hear more Cannabis Enlightened with Dr. Leroy, be sure to visit us online at cannabisenlightened.com and subscribe wherever you download your podcasts. Cannabis Enlightened is produced in San Diego, California, and presented by March and Ash at marchandash.com. On behalf of Dr. Leroy, I'm Chris Cantori, and thank you for listening.
Olas Media.